There are certain regrets in life, regrets that people rarely notice in the moment, because the rush of daily life, the weight of routines, and the habits built over the years sometimes trick us into believing that even our mistakes are normal, even necessary. But here's the truth. Once you cross the age of 60, if you continue to hold on to certain behaviors, habits, or patterns of thinking, there will come a day, maybe at 70, 75, or 80, when you'll look back and ask yourself painful questions. Why did I live like that? Why did I waste so much time on that? Why did I make my own life so difficult for so long? And that's exactly what this video is about today. We're going to talk about those everyday behaviors, the ones that seem small, the ones you repeat without thinking, the ones that eventually turn into your biggest regrets after 60. Maybe as you watch, you'll see parts of yourself. Maybe you'll recognize habits you've carried for years without realizing their weight. Maybe you'll suddenly notice how things you once said, "Oh, it's not a big deal," about, were actually quiet traps that stole your joy, your energy, your peace. Because believe me, there are countless people out there now 70, 75, 80 years old looking back on their past, shaking their heads and whispering the same words. I did the same thing over and over. I stayed stuck in the same cycle for years. If only I had handled things differently when I had the chance. And here's the saddest part. Yes, our bodies weaken as we age. But sometimes our minds, our habits, and our stubborn ways are even harder to change than the body itself. Every point we're going to talk about today comes from real life, from the stories of thousands of people who only realized these truths far too late. Some of them might sound so simple to you. Some will make you nod your head and say, "I do exactly the same thing." But all of them share one heartbreaking truth. These habits slowly rot us from the inside out as the years go by. And the worst part is this: 90% of people who continue living this way only recognize their deepest regrets when it's already too late. But if you're watching this video right now, you're lucky, because maybe, just maybe, there's still time for you. Maybe you still have the chance to rewrite parts of your story. Maybe today can be the day you open a new chapter in your life. So if you're ready, let's begin. Today, we're going to talk about those things. The behaviors you once thought were right or normal, but might very well become the things you'll one day whisper to yourself. I wish I hadn't lived like that. And by the end of this video, I'm going to ask you one very important question. What's your regret? What's the habit or behavior you most wish you could change? If you're ready, let's begin. 1. Worrying about things you can't control. Some people in life treat worrying like a personal habit, almost like a part of their character. For them, every little thing becomes huge, every uncertainty turns into a crisis, and every small possibility of something bad happening grows into a dark storm in their minds. And people like this, they usually destroy their own peace, not because of what actually happens, but because of what might happen. This is the story of someone exactly like that. The story of 68-year-old Helga. Helga was a typical German woman, disciplined, organized, planned. Every minute of her life was scheduled. She thought through every possibility, prepared for every outcome, and tried to control every detail. Maybe this habit helped her succeed when she was young. Maybe it worked while raising her kids. But as Helga got older, that same habit became her greatest burden. Because as life goes on, the number of things you can't control only grows. Your children grow up. They have their own lives. Your grandchildren act however they want. Your health sometimes slips from your hands. And the world? The world definitely doesn't follow your plans. But Helga couldn't accept that. Whenever her grandchildren didn't answer their phone, her mind went wild. 1,000 terrible scenarios played out in her head. Whenever her children couldn't visit, she immediately thought, something bad must have happened. Whenever she felt the smallest health problem, she was sure it was the beginning of something serious. And over time, this desire to control everything completely took over her life. The first thing she did every morning was turn on the news, checking for earthquakes, disasters, new diseases, and every piece of bad news felt like a personal threat to her. It was as if every tragedy happening somewhere in the world would soon knock on her door. Her children told her again and again, "Mom, relax. Let things go a little. Life isn't something you can control this much." But for Helga, that was impossible. She always carried that fear, that anxiety, that constant readiness for something terrible. Eventually, this stress started leaving marks on her body. She couldn't sleep. She woke up exhausted. She had headaches every night. Even when the doctors told her her heart was perfectly fine, she would still whisper to herself, what if they missed something? But the worst part, the most heartbreaking realization came years later. Helga looked back and finally saw the truth. All the things she had worried about, all the nights she lost sleep, all the stress and fear she carried. 99% of it never even happened. Most of what she tortured herself over never existed beyond her own mind. And one day, looking in the mirror, she said words that would stay with her forever. "I wasted years of my life worrying about things that never even happened." This is one of the greatest traps people fall into as they get older. Worrying about things they can't control. Because here's reality. Life won't always go the way you planned. Your children won't always behave how you want. Your health will sometimes surprise you. The world will do whatever the world wants to do. But if you let your mind drown in anxiety over things you can't control, you destroy the beauty of the life you are living. Helga realized this too late. But maybe you, watching this video right now, maybe you still have time. Maybe you're in the same cycle. Maybe you're trying to control everything. Maybe you're exhausting yourself day by day, drowning in what ifs. But believe me, true peace isn't about letting go of all control. It's about accepting what you cannot control and freeing yourself from that burden. And Helga's words, the lesson of her life, is a lesson for all of us. Most of my suffering came from things that never even happened. 2. Isolating yourself from social life. When you're young, you don't even realize it. Life is crowded. Workplaces, neighbors, friends, children, guests, your life is in constant motion. And in the middle of that chaos, sometimes you find yourself thinking, oh, I wish I could just be alone for a while. You long for silence. You dream of an empty house. You talk about the beauty of peace and quiet. But as you grow older, reality looks completely different. Because when loneliness stops being a choice and turns into a necessity, that's when everything in your life begins to fall apart. Especially after the age of 60, people slowly and unknowingly shrink their social circles. Visits to neighbors become rare. Small talks at the grocery store disappear. Old coffee chats with friends fade away, sometimes because they live too far away, and sometimes because they're no longer here. And slowly, you start telling yourself, I guess I don't really need to see anyone anymore. But this is a huge mistake, because humans are social beings. No matter how strong you are, no matter how independent, there will come a day when that empty chair at your table will begin to bother you deeply. Losing someone you used to sit and chat with for hours is painful in its own way, but choosing to end relationships with your own hands while they're still alive is a regret that's much heavier. And this process doesn't happen overnight. It sneaks into your life quietly. At first, someone doesn't call you, so you tell yourself, well, I won't call them either. Then someone invites you for coffee, but you decline, saying, I'm busy. Then days pass, weeks, months. And one day, you look back and realize that you haven't sat down for a long, deep conversation with anyone for an entire year. This is how loneliness grows. And the most dangerous part is this. People mistake this for pride. They confuse self-sufficiency with accepting loneliness. But being strong in life doesn't mean staying away from everyone. Quite the opposite. Life becomes beautiful when shared, when talked about, when spent together. Today, many elderly people wake up in the morning without a clue of how their day will pass, because they have no plan. No neighbor to visit, no friend to drop by, no one to call. And when you become so used to being alone after a while, you start to forget how to talk. Maybe right now you're caught in the same cycle. You keep saying, I don't need anyone. But deep down, you know how happy you would feel if someone knocked on your door, if someone invited you for tea, if someone said, let's go for a walk. Because people often realize their loneliness in the moments they least expected. When holiday tables are being set, when you stare at your silent phone on your birthday, or when you go shopping at the market just for one person. So I have a very clear question for you. Did you really choose loneliness, or did life slowly push you into it? Write to me in the comments. I would love to know your story, your feelings, your experience. Because maybe you'll write it. Someone else will read it, and it will give them courage. Don't forget to like this video, because maybe this video will open a small door in someone's life. 3. Ignoring small health problems. Some people aren't afraid of doctors, yet they constantly postpone going to one. For them, visiting a doctor isn't about facing illness. It's about admitting the truth. That's why the stories of those who ignore their body's warnings for years often sound very similar. Just like the story of 71-year-old Erwin. Erwin was a typical retired German man living in a small town. He had spent his life working, first in a factory, later as a carpenter, quietly providing for his family. He was a man of routine, modest, with no grand expectations from life. But Erwin's biggest mistake was this. He always knew he should take better care of himself, but never did. In the mornings, he started getting tired more easily. His breathing became slightly labored. At night, he felt a tightness in his chest. But every time, he repeated the same line, "It'll pass." Sometimes, his wife would get frustrated with his stubbornness and say, "Come on, just go get checked by a doctor." But for Erwin, that was unnecessary fuss. To him, people who went to hospitals or wanted checkups were either too fearful or exaggerating their problems. But the human body is not something you can keep postponing forever. Sooner or later, it tells you, in no uncertain terms, now you will listen to me. That moment for Erwin came one morning while he was making breakfast. Suddenly, his breath stopped. A pressure in his chest built up, something he had never felt before. And this time, his usual "it'll pass" didn't work. Because it didn't pass, he was rushed to the hospital. The doctors told him that he had severe arterial blockage and that if it had been caught earlier, it would have been far easier to manage. But now, the situation was serious, and Erwin's world collapsed. In that hospital room, he whispered to himself, "If I had known it would come to this, I would have gone to the doctor years ago." But some regrets in life lose all their meaning when they arrive too late. You can't get back the health you lost, or the years you ignored your body. And today, many people behave exactly like Erwin. They wake up tired and say it's probably just poor sleep. They have nightly headaches and blame stress. They run out of breath climbing stairs and dismiss it as aging. But remember this, your body always speaks to you. And if you ignore it for long enough, one day it will silence you instead. So I'm asking you directly, what symptom are you currently noticing but choosing to ignore? Write it in the comments. Say what you've been neglecting in your own health, because maybe your words will inspire someone else to take action for theirs. And like this video, because maybe, just maybe, this video could be the one that saves someone's life. 4. Living passively and delaying joy. Sometimes life pulls you into a cycle so quietly, you don't even realize that you're postponing everything. I'll do it later. There's still time. Not now. But life moves forward in a merciless way. And when you finally realize that all those things you said later to never actually happened, that's when the hardest emotion hits you, regret. This is exactly one of the biggest mistakes people over 60 make. Living life passively, just getting through the day, just handling routines, and postponing everything else over and over again. You wake up in the morning, the same breakfast, the same chair, the same TV show, the same walk, the same silence, the same routine. Every day has become a copy of the last. And after a while, you find yourself asking, when did I really live? Because there are things in life that aren't just for the young. Little joys, beautiful moments, laughter, small trips, new friendships, new hobbies. None of these have an age limit. But as people grow older, they begin to hide behind excuses. I'll go when the grandkids visit. We'll travel when summer comes. Once my health improves, I'll go out for coffee. But the grandkids don't visit as often. Summer never seems to end. Health never feels perfect enough. And those beautiful moments quietly disappear from your life. That's why one day you'll look in the mirror and ask yourself, what have I been waiting for all this time? That perfect time life is supposedly preparing you for never comes. And it never will. Because the truth is, life doesn't reward those who delay things, it rewards those who live. And the more you postpone, the more you lose. Today, how many I'll do it later moments do you have in your life? Maybe there's a place you've wanted to visit for years. Maybe there's a friend you should have called long ago. Maybe there's a hobby you wanted to start. Maybe it's just sitting by the sea and having a cup of tea. But the same excuses keep coming, the same delays. So let me ask you directly, what have you been constantly postponing? And isn't it finally time to ask yourself honestly, what exactly am I still waiting for? Write to me in the comments. Because believe me, when you write it down, you commit to yourself even more. Maybe you'll write it, and maybe that thing you write will become the very first step you take today. Don't forget to like this video, because maybe this video will be the reason someone out there stops postponing their most beautiful moments any longer. 5. Staying silent about your needs or feelings. When you're young, words come out easily. You express what you want. You get angry, you ask. You share your needs without hesitation. But as the years pass, especially after the age of 60, something quieter starts growing inside, a fear. What if they misunderstand me? What if I become a burden? What if I disturb my children? And that fear over time turns into a habit. You stop speaking. This is the story of a woman who lived like that for years. The story of Ingrid, age 76. Ingrid was born and raised in a small town in Germany. She spent her life devoted to her family, raising her children, supporting her husband. She was strong. She was quiet. And she hated being a burden. But that silence slowly turned her into a stranger to herself. Back in the day, her children used to ask her everything. They came to her with their problems. "Mom, what should we do?" They needed her wisdom. But over time, roles changed. The children grew up. Grandchildren arrived. Everyone got busy with their own lives. And Ingrid became one of those typical older women, always listening, always understanding, never speaking about herself. Deep down, she had so much bottled up. Her health wasn't great. Some nights she couldn't sleep. Some mornings she woke up in pain. Even simple household chores were getting hard. But no one knew, because Ingrid always said the same sentence: "I'm fine." But she wasn't fine. She just didn't want to trouble anyone. She didn't want to bother them. She didn't want to be a burden. And here's the painful truth. The more you stay silent, the more people believe you're truly okay. Until one day, that silence breaks. When Ingrid's children came to visit during the holidays, she lost her balance trying to stand up in the kitchen and fell. Everyone was shocked. No one had realized how weak she had become. No one had seen how tired, how lonely, how silent she really was. And what her children said while helping her up was heartbreaking. "Mom, why didn't you say something?" And Ingrid's response was even more heartbreaking. "I didn't say anything because I didn't want to bother anyone." That's what life can do sometimes. The more you stay quiet, the more people think you're fine. The more you bury your needs, the more people assume you don't have any. The more you act strong, the less people notice your pain. But here's the truth. If you don't speak up, one day that silence will come crashing down in the worst possible way. And you, watching this video right now, maybe you're doing exactly what Ingrid did. Maybe you've been hiding behind the "I'm fine" lie for years. Maybe everyone thinks you're strong. But deep down, you're exhausted. You're hurt. You're alone. So I want to ask you, what have you been unable to say the most? What feeling or need have you buried for years? Write it in the comments, because sometimes just writing it down is enough to lift the weight. And don't forget to like this video. Maybe this will be the first step for someone to finally express what they've been holding in for far too long. 6. Measuring your value based on others. One of the most painful truths of life is this. When you are young, you always feel valuable somehow. There are children around you, the house is full, people ask for your advice, seek your help, want your opinion. What you know matters, what you say is heard, and your presence is always felt. But as the years pass, as the balance of life changes, you realize something that hits deep. Feeling valuable sometimes depends entirely on how much others need you. And one person who experienced the harshest side of this reality was 74-year-old Carl. Carl had worked all his life. He was an engineer at a car factory in his younger days, well-respected, highly knowledgeable, always surrounded by people. Whenever his children had a problem, Carl was their first call. His grandchildren would always ask him for help with their homework. Neighbors would knock on his door whenever something needed fixing in the garden. Carl built most of his identity around being needed by others. His sense of worth came from being useful. But then, life played its cruel game. The kids grew up. Their lives got busier. The grandchildren turned to technology for answers, not Grandpa, but Google. The neighborhood changed. Young families moved in. Nobody knocked on Carl's door anymore. And Carl realized, as the days passed, fewer people called. No one asked him anything. No one needed advice. At first, he pretended not to care. They're young, their lives are busy, he told himself. But over time, the silence in the house, the emptiness in his heart, began to grow. One day, sitting in front of his bookshelf, he found an old note while looking through photos. It was from his grandchild, written years ago. "Grandpa, you are the smartest man in the world." As Carl read those words, tears rolled down his cheeks. Because he felt so far from that sentence now. No one asked him anything anymore. No one said, "What do you think, Grandpa?" anymore. And in that moment, he realized something deeply painful. He had spent years feeling valuable only when others needed him. But now that the attention was gone, he was left all alone with himself. And that's one of life's harshest lessons. If you tie your worth only to the attention, the questions, the praise, the calls from others, when those things disappear, you risk losing your own sense of worth. But real value, real self-worth, does not come from others calling you, praising you, or needing you. If you know your own value inside, it can never be taken away. Today, Carl's story is the story of so many people. Once needed, once asked, once seen, now forgotten, invisible, silent. And now I want to ask you directly, when did you feel the most valuable in your life? And right now, what makes you feel truly valuable? Write in the comments, because maybe what you share will touch the heart of someone else feeling exactly the same way. Don't forget to like the video, because maybe this video will help someone remember their own worth, not from others, but from within themselves. Life has this strange way of slipping through your fingers without you realizing it. The same breakfast every morning, the same chair, the same silence, and without even noticing, the same mistakes. Everything we talked about in this video today. Maybe some of it felt simple to you at first. Maybe you saw yourself in some of them. Maybe a few sounded very familiar. But the truth is, throughout life, people always lose themselves in the same cycles. You worry about things you can't control. You isolate yourself in loneliness. You ignore the warning signs from your body. You constantly postpone beautiful moments. You're afraid to speak your heart. And in the end, you tie your worth to the attention of others. Then one day you look in the mirror and you ask yourself this painful question. Did I really live? Or did I just wait all this time? But believe me, it's never too late. You can take a step today. You can do something for yourself today. You can speak, you can share. You can give back the life you've been postponing to yourself today. Life no longer rewards those who wait. Life rewards those who live. And maybe this video was just a small reminder for you. Maybe a chance to see again what you've been overlooking. So now I want to ask you something very sincerely. What is the one habit or behavior you regret the most? What is the one thing about yourself you most wish you could change? What is the one sentence you've been holding inside for years, but never said out loud? Write it in the comments below, because every word you share might echo in someone else's life today. And don't forget to like the video, because maybe this video will reach another person making the same mistakes. Maybe it will open someone's eyes. Maybe it will restart a life that has been postponed for too long. And remember this, life doesn't reward those who wait. Life loves those who dare.